right, well, it is great to be here today, and I couldn't get through this when I was rehearsing it at home in the mirror, so I know this is going to probably be a little rough. But we're so privileged to be here today as we remember my dad, and thank you to the church and Mr. Potter for inviting me. And tell you what, I've always been like the middle child, kind of the, say about the middle child. Love, we wanted Steve in here. He's the youngest one. He's getting his working at preacher. Jonathan's the oldest one. Well, I guess Steve. Timothy's here, so I'll do my best. I wanted to sympathize.
They're always obedient.
But it is great to be here. And as I look around and as we shook hands and stuff, and just so many memories, and each just going to go around forever and ever and talk about so many lives and experiences and times that we had. And it's great to be here. But I wrote it down because I knew if I tried to just talk that. Who knows what I'd say, and so I tried to write it down. But I did want to, before I get to that, I appreciate the songs that have been sung this morning, just remembering those, and I'll never forget Derek and Brian and Marsha Potter singing that Mercy Seat song, and I'll never forget when they got done, my dad coming, every time they changed the octave, or changed the key and went up a little bit higher, by the end, I remember I thought they were going to go through the roof over there, or something like that, and Marsha singing As Well With My Soul. And I thought this morning as I sat there, and great job leading that song, but I don't ever remember a time when It Is Well With My Soul was sung that my dad didn't get up afterwards and say, I can't let that song be sung without you hearing a story about Horatio G. Spafford. And I thought as we remember his life, my dad's life, that song has meant so much to me over the years. Horatio Spafford was a rich man after coming out of the Civil War. Him and his wife were wealthy men who gave their lives to ministry, really. Were involved in ministry in many ways. They worked with D.L. Moody, had him in his house many times, and worked to feed the poor. And as America came out of the Civil War, really to work to rebuild America and the problems that there were. And as a wealthy man, he had actually just invested in a lot of money in a lot of real estate in Chicago. And several months before, his son had actually died. He had 5 kids. His son had actually died of scarlet fever, and their family was devastated. And then in the 1870s, it wasn't so loud, his cow kicked over the lantern, and the Great Chicago Fire wiped out a large portion of his investment that he had just put money into. And his wife began to become sick and was ailing, and the stress from all of that going on, they decided, let's take the little bit of money we have left, and we need to go on vacation. We need to go to Europe, go on vacation. And so they bought the tickets. They were ready to board the boat, and something happened that caused Mr. Spafford to stay behind. And as his wife and 4 kids headed across the Atlantic Ocean, something happened. I think they were going to be hit by another boat of some sort of a foggy night. And Mr. Spafford received a telegram from his wife, saved alone, what should I do? And it was with all those thoughts and that desperation and that sickness in his heart, as Mr. Spafford boarded a boat and headed across the Atlantic Ocean, he asked the captain, when we reached that spot where the other ship went down, can you call me? I'd like to be there. And as he reached that spot and went out and stood on the deck and looked out at the calm waters where his 4 daughters had been lost, and he thought of his investments that had been lost, and his other son that had been lost, and the problems he had in his life, he penned those amazing words: peace like a river, tendeth my way when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it's well. It's well with my soul. And I remember that story, and we were talking yesterday as we stood at the graveside and looked at my dad's tomb about some of the hard times we went through. And of course I've heard that story many times. I've sang that song many times. But I remember that morning when he called me and my mom and said, you need to come down. We got back the results from his brain scan. And that wasn't a good thing. 3 o'clock in the morning, normally they don't give you lots of good news at 3 in the morning. And we walked down that hallway, and the words of that song just crashed through my head. And over the last 10 years, as time has gone on, and so many times that song has been sung, and I'm so thankful because of the ministry of my dad and the impact he had on my life and so many others. So many people here can say, my sin of the bliss of his glorious thought. Yes. Not in part, but the whole. It's nailed to his cross. Amen. I know there's sorrows and there's problems that we have, difficulties in our life. Things happen. It is well. it is well with my soul. And I know that would be the message He wanted to give to you this morning. God's faithfulness, as Mr. Potter talked about, but that no matter what's going on in your life, no matter what's happened, if it's sorrows, if it's problems, if it's sin, there is a peace that passes all understanding. And I'm so thankful for that this morning. Not what I'm supposed to read. To our friends in Tuscaloosa, sorry that Stephen and Jonathan and his family were not able to join you today, but please know their hearts are with you. We have such wonderful memories of you all and the years spent here. Thank you for always loving and for supporting our family. Thank you for taking time today to honor and remember our dad. It's hard to believe it's been 10 years already since he left us, but I'm thankful for the memories that we have. His life was a reflection of what he believed, and we are so grateful for the legacy that he left behind. The lessons we learned from him, we learned not just from what he said, but also from the way he lived. I teach and I talk to kids every day, and I'm often reminded of one of his favorite sayings, and I try to live this in my life, and I try to give it to my kids. He always loved to say, your walk talks and your talk talks, but your walk talks louder than your talk talks, which always got a blank stare from my students and still does to this day. I'm going to read that again. Your walk talks and your talk talks, but your walk talks louder than your talk talks. And my students always look at me and say, are you saying actions speak louder than words? Yeah, but mine's cooler, you know. So I think that's a great example of how he lived his life. Our dad was our biggest fan. He was our supporter, he was our leader, and he was an example of what it means to be a godly father. It's also true for Stephen and I that Jonathan says, as I think back over a lifetime of memories, my greatest aspiration is to be the kind of dad to Harper that he was to me. While she will never get to meet her Grandpa Makcen here, I believe there are plenty of lessons she can learn from the stories we will all be able to share with her. Like, number one, don't take fashion advice from a man who wears pink straps on his sunglasses. Never forget, I was cool, I was a high schooler playing baseball. My dad had the flat bill when flat bills were not in. And he'd wear his sunglasses with those pink straps on them, and you know, thanks Dad, that's my dad. Good times. Also, the tenor part in a quartet, it doesn't just mean you sing the lead part one octave higher, or two, or half, or three quarters, or wherever you end up. That's what I've mentioned several times today. If you're picking up parishioners in the church band, and she's not here today, but make sure they wear their seatbelts at all times. I believe Mrs. Paris one time ended up in between the seats with my dad. He looked down and said, Sister Paris, what are you doing? So seatbelts are very important. I think Brother Bobby and Paul and Roscoe, many others can probably relate to this one. If you're going to try to take a city boy hunting, make sure he has a GPS so he can make it out of the backyard. Never forget down at Brother Colburn's house. They were down there hunting and they told him to go out and told him where to go. And he went and found a great spot and nestled down and started to get light out. And he looked and, oh, they're right there. Got all excited. Got his gun up and tried to find it and was looking and got through the scope. And that deer's got really pointy ears. Looked at it a little closer and it was Brother Colburn's German Shepherd. Got a little brighter out and he realized, wait a minute, I'm sitting in the backyard still. There's the house right there. Also, if you're going to take a city boy hunting, Brother Bobby, make sure he knows he can't just shoot all the deer in the field just because he thought he missed the first one, which happened. And also make sure he knows the difference between a buck and a doe, because that also happened. He was so excited, he called Brother Bobby and said, I got two deer. Brother Bobby said, you're not supposed to shoot 2 deer. He said, well, I didn't know the first one got hit. He's like, well, Brother Bobby said, well, can we come help you? Can we get it? You know, we need to get those out of the field. And he said, oh, I got them. And Brother Bobby said, you already got them? He said, yeah, I'll bring them over. So he brought them over and popped the trunk of our Grand Prix. And there were 2 deer, about yay big, in the back of there. And he said, yeah, these 2 does, they walked out in front of me. And Brother Bobby got looking and both of them had little antlers on their head. Those aren't doe. Lots of good memories hunting. Some of you guys, when playing Rook, anybody can make a bid of 135. And even though she's not here today, she was asked to come, but when playing Phase 10, always skip Tara. I'll never forget the time we were playing Phase 10, and I don't remember what was going on. Phase 10's a card game that we play all the time on Sunday nights with many of you around, and you could skip people in that game. and you could choose the person you skipped. And it was always a big thing, S is for Sharon, skip Sharon, S is for Stephen, skip Steve, and all these things. And you're supposed to skip the people who are the lead, of course, And somehow my dad and Tara got going back and forth, and they just skipped each other the whole time. And we got towards the end of the game, and Tara had a skip, and she played it, and my dad just, eloquently explained why skipping Nathan was a better idea. And, a 5-minute discourse followed, and it was, we got to skip Nathan, he's going to win, yada, 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 yada. And so finally she said, okay, this goes against all my morals, all my principles, but skip Nathan. The very next person to play was my dad. He laid a skip and said, skip Tara. She threw her cards across the table and screamed and hollered. I don't remember how that game ended, but I don't think anybody won. Lots of great memories and lots of funny things that if we just told funny memories, as I'm sure you all could, we could go on and on and on. But I think on a serious note, most importantly, because of him, back to the idea of teaching Harper these things, we can teach Harper to love Jesus with her whole heart and dedicate her entire life to serving him. Because it wasn't just about fun and games, it wasn't just about good times. But like Brother Banks said, he's gone. He's over there now. It wasn't just about those things. We're here to serve God, and that's what it's all about. As he was reading that verse as the PowerPoint player, which, by the way, the PowerPoint, that was amazing. A lot of you guys have changed a lot. I'm thankful I haven't at all. I'm still thin, young looking. You guys have changed a lot. As he was reading that verse, Romans chapter 12, verses 1 and 2, I beseech you therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you sacrifice your lives, your whole life. And that's what he was all about. The message, another version of the Bible, the message says, I want you to take your everyday lives. I want you to take your eating, your drinking, your sleeping, you're having fun. I tell my students in school, you're going to school. I want you to take that and I want you to place it before God and live it as a sacrifice to the Lord. And I think that sums up his life. I think all these stories that we tell and the fun times that we'll have, and I'm sure many of you can have stories in your mind, but I think they all highlight some things that we all know to be true about our dad. First off, he was always involved in people's lives. All these stories about hunting and him making a fool of himself, and I can never forget our garden our first year. Some of you who were here, I mean, that was the most beautiful garden in all of Tuscaloosa because we didn't have a clue what we were doing. And every single day we got home from school, we went out there, we picked weeds, we hoed, we made sure everything was just perfect. And I think there was even maybe a story in there about potatoes and trying to figure out why aren't our potatoes growing? Like, we don't have any, there's beautiful plants. And someone came by and said, potatoes are brown. And all those stories are just examples of my dad's attempt as a Yankee preacher, as some of you made sure to let us know when we got here. As a Yankee preacher coming down here, his attempts to step outside his comfort zone and to be involved in others' lives. He wasn't better than anybody. He didn't know a better way to do it, and he wanted people to know, I'm here to serve you. And I think that is such an important principle that I've tried to impart in my life, and that I think he definitely had in his. That I always think about this involvement in others' lives, involved in y'all's lives, involved in our lives. We used to play basketball here. I'm not sure if the basketball goal, if there is one out here anymore, but we used to play out there all the time. And unlike me, as he got older, his skills diminished. Mine are actually growing better. He got a little slower and a little bit not quite as good of a shot, but he was still always out there. I remember playing basketball with us, holding his back with one hand and shooting with his other, And I remember Jordan, this didn't even make any sense, but we used to always, you could always beat him baseline because he wasn't fast enough to keep up with you, so he'd drive baseline. Unfortunately, baseline is also a chain link fence. And even if you get past it, it's still it's amazing what a little shove of the hand will do from the right side of your body as you grate up against that chain link fence. And he always said, if you want to play with the big boys, you got to bring some mustard on your plate. Which didn't make any sense. That's what he said. And that meant you're going in the chain link fence. Always involved in people's lives. Number two, he was extremely faithful. He was so faithful to his family, to his friends, and to his congregation, to this church. I think every single one of us can remember times where we needed Brother Makcen, or in our case, our dad, and he was always there for us. I can't remember a time that our family, or especially him, missed a church service. Seriously, we were here 10 years, and I think we were here every Sunday. I mean, maybe there was one or something every Wednesday night. Remember many vacations ending on a Saturday morning so we could get back in time for church. I remember very frustratedly missing many different events and things that were happening at school or different things like that because, we're going to church. And he was extremely faithful. He was faithful to his family. He was faithful to his congregation. He cared about each and every one of you. I don't think he ever missed a birth of somebody's child or a surgery. Or I remember many times, middle of the night, 10 o'clock at night, whatever time of day, him getting called and showing up somewhere where you were, where you needed help, where you had a problem that he had to face, that he wanted to help you in. And so he was extremely, extremely faithful. He was always willing to help people. I think, so many examples. We could spend the next while here talking about just different ways. I always think of Brother Dennis Lake, and Dwayne, I think you were there for this. We went out to his house, and they bought that property, and they were putting in a fence line, barbed wire fence, which we didn't have a clue about. We didn't know what we were doing. But we went to help, and they had a bobcat there. And he had never driven a bobcat in his life, but he thought, I could do that, I could do that, right? And so he got on the bobcat, and he was going to clear the fence line. I seriously think we maybe got about 10 feet of fencing that day because we spent about 12 hours of that day into the dark trying to get the bobcat out of the big hole that he had slid down into. And about the time we got the bobcat out, he slid the truck that he was in down back into the same hole, and then we used the bobcat to get the truck out. And, oh my word. But he was always willing to help people. He always was there for people. Me and my mom were talking yesterday as the last year of his life, really, is Sister Judy. Some of you don't know Sister Judy, but Sister Judy Wyatt, as she went through her own battles and problems, just the amounts of time that he spent going up to Birmingham to visit her, and probably to his detriment as he faced his own sickness. But his life wasn't important. It was all about serving others and always wanting to help other people. And I think about the many, many examples, and I think all of us, once again, could think of a story in our mind where we needed some help. And maybe he didn't know what he was doing. Maybe he wasn't the greatest help, but he sure tried hard. And I think that's some lessons that we can all learn from that. Once again, as we leave today, it's not just about funny stories, which there's a lot of them. There's a whole lot of them. It's not just about time with family and friends, but it's about, like Dwayne says, leaving a legacy and being involved in people's lives, being faithful, being willing to help others, putting others first, and as Romans chapter 12, verse 1 and 2 says, just committing our everyday life, every part of us, to working for the Lord. Once again, thank you so much for celebrating my dad's life today. As the Makcen family, we love you all, and we're so thankful for the time that we spent here and the many memories that were made. And we look forward to many more and being able to spend time with you guys again in the future. Thank you very much.
Amen.